In this video we will review the most important functions of the organism, and explain why they are so important. Let's start the journey. In a Milky Way galaxy that was born 13.5 billion years ago, there is a planet in a solar system that originated 9 billion years later. That planet is our home and we call it the Earth. Just 750 million years after the birth of the planet, the first forms of life began to evolve. According to some ideas, electrical charges forced elements to bind into organic molecules. Scientists of the previous century even studied those processes scientifically at the beginning of the 20th century. Those molecules bent and interacted as they do today, until an RNA molecule came into existence, which had the properties of reproducing itself. With endless cycles of reproduction, new properties evolved and shaped the life itself. All living cells have DNA inside. Some have it in their nucleus and some just floating around the cell. At some point, units of life become subunits of a larger unit. In that everlasting circle, cells formed tissues, tissues formed organs, organs formed bodies, bodies formed groups, and groups formed society. And now we can say that our society is a huge quantity of cells, working together as a whole in perfect order. The environment is simultaneously nourishing and dangerous. It constantly changes its form and structure. A cell is considered a building block of life because it was the first structure to separate itself from the environment with a membrane. Cells were also the first entities to create their own environment. Later in evolution, cells started to form colonies, becoming each other's environment. There are some theories that our mitochondria were separate cells one day, but gave away their freedom to live in peace. Living systems from cells to countries have developed complex border subsystems that help them protect themselves, maintain boundaries, import and export stuff. There are lots of chemical processes going continuously inside our bodies to keep us alive. We breathe, digest food, and fix damaged cells, and each of these actions requires energy. All of those processes together are called metabolism. Anabolism is the set of metabolic pathways that construct molecules from smaller units. We need an extra input of energy to perform those processes. Catabolism is the set of metabolic pathways that break down larger molecules into smaller ones. These reactions go with a release of energy. Smaller units are either oxidized to release more energy or used in other anabolic reactions. Energy is like a glue for everything in our universe. All the systems, dead and alive, from sugar molecules to large corporations, have their parts connected together by this energy. Physics defines body energy as an ability to perform work. Plants transform the energy of the sunlight into their own energy, which they store in bonds of sugar molecules they produce. We call this process photosynthesis. It works in the following way. They consume carbon dioxide from the air and water from the soil and use the energy of the sunlight to relink their atoms in a different pattern and produce a sugar. The excretion of this process is oxygen. Chloroplast is an organelle of a plant cell, which is responsible for capturing the sun energy and producing an ATP molecule, that is used to build sugars. Other organisms, like us humans, consume the elements of their environment, like plants or other organisms, and then break down those sugar molecules to create their own energy. In the human cell, the role of chloroplast is performed by another organelle. Mitochondria. Cells are organisms and digestive systems at the same time. But complex living things, like humans or animals, have their separate digestive systems, which perform complex sets of activities. The environment gives the organisms things to consume, but very little of this food can be used to the full extent by the digestive systems. None of the known systems is 100% efficient. So organisms use some part of the input, and the rest is going to become waste. Our digestive, respiratory, and urinary systems emit their parts of waste back into the environment. All of those functions can be aggregated into an excretion system. All biological processes need energy to be executed. And the universal currency for those processes is ATP. There are numerous ways to get those. The earliest organisms broke down carbon-containing molecules, like carbon dioxide or methane, and produced energy in a process called chemosynthesis. But then new types of organisms came. They created organic matter from carbon-containing molecules with the help of water and used the energy of the sunlight in a process called photosynthesis. Photosynthesis excretes oxygen, so once the plants caused one of the greatest extinction in the history of our planet by generating this oxygen in deadly amounts. The most common ways to get ATP among our cells are glycolysis and oxidative phosphorylation. That skill took cells millions of years to acquire, but it was worth it. Getting ATP with the help of oxygen is many times more effective than more simple glycolysis. Mitochondria in our cells are responsible for 90% of ATP production. Respiration in our bodies serves to get this oxygen to cells to make these ATP factories working. That is why it is so important. The environment changes non-stop, and any organism needs to adapt. In some cases, the best way to adapt is to change the environment. That is why organisms use energy and turn it into movement. There is plenty of movement in the internal environment as well as in the external. Life itself is a movement. All the cells on this planet were once one single cell, which separated itself from the environment. It took gazillions of cycles of growth and reproduction to reach this state of the planet. These two processes, growth and reproduction, are part of a huge, endless process of evolution. In other terms, they are called ontogenesis and phylogenesis. In us humans, a single cell grows to become an individual, meets another individual and makes a new cell, which repeats the cycle. Responsiveness is one of the most complex properties of living organisms. Living organisms navigate in, sense, and react to changes, in both inside and outside environment. While cells have quite simple reactions, larger systems from beehives to human communities have complex reactions with emergent properties that we can hardly grasp from a lower level of understanding. All levels of life use responsiveness to move, change their inside state, emit and receive signals. There is a nice phrase out there. It is an answer to the question, what is the meaning of life? It is expansion. Subscribe to our channel to see more educational videos like this. If you would like to support us, visit our online store, or perhaps become our patron.